Alrighty, how's everybody doing? Today we are going to take a look at the Zeiss Ikon Contina II. It's either a 2 or a 2A. The nomenclature for these cameras is a little confusing, and I'm going to link down below to some blog entries written by some other collectors, who some of whom discussed the nomenclature of this camera. It's simply labeled a Contina. Here, there's a Contina right there. But the owner's manual for this camera that I downloaded calls it a Contina II, Roman numeral 2, but then collectors refer to it as a Contina IIa to differentiate it from another Contina II, I think, which was a folding camera. And when I say a folding camera, I mean one like this. This is Voigtlander Vito, which folds and unfolds like this. Apparently there were earlier versions of the Zeiss Contina which folded like this. This one, however, does not fold and it's called a rigid. Well, it's rigid as opposed to folding, which when you're talking about old cameras, that's the opposite of a folding camera would be a rigid camera. So this is rigid. All right, so nomenclature out of the way, Zeiss Contina. And I've just finished shooting my 4th roll of film in this camera, and I'm going to just talk about some of my first impressions of using it. I've got 3 rolls processed and up on my Flickr album of images shot with this camera, which I will also link to down below. So I just finished the last exposure. You can see the exposure counter up top is at 36. So let's see, well, I guess I missed one. Could have squeezed off one extra shot, but, and there, okay. So now, when you get to the end of the roll, don't force it. Just do not force it. I can feel resistance here. It's not going to go any further, so that tells me that is the absolute last, the last of the roll. I've come to the end. So what do I do now? We're going to press this button right here. And on this particular camera, I need to hold this button in as I rewind it. I don't know if that's true of all Continas or if it's just a quirk of this particular camera because it's a little old. But I'm going to hold this in like so, and I'm going to pull up. On the Contina, you pull. You don't pull up on the rewind knob like so. You see the arrow here. You simply twist, and the knob will naturally rise about, I don't know, centimeter, half a centimeter up top like that. And now it's going to rewind. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to put the microphone down next to the camera so you can hear what it sounds like as it's rewinding. That okay. So the last bit of film is released from the take-up spool. You can hear that, and there is also a definite tactile sensation when that happens. You can feel that it turns very, very smooth. It's very loose right now. Okay, so I'm going to put this back down. So to retract the rewind knob, again, you don't push it. You just turn it like so. And I'm going to open the back of the camera. And on the Contina, you have a latch down here, right there. Pull down on the latch, that frees the back. And now open the back of the camera like so. And I'm going to pull up on the knob so the little forks are released. Okay, there we go. And now I can simply remove this from, I said I can simply remove, doggone it. It's not being difficult. Now I can simply remove this from the back of the, oh, no, here we go. Camera like so. Okay, so there we go. There, so actually you do pull up. Okay. Put that down, and then let's see here. Then there we go. All right. So if I hold this steady, then I can pull up and retract. Okay. Got it. Very good. But in order to get the forks out of the way, it has to be in the up position, and then from there you pull up. Very good. Okay. Excellent. Now, when I first got this camera, it did need a little bit of work, and I knew that. It was advertised that way, so I took it down to the legendary Yaakov on Allenby Street in Tel Aviv, who took it apart, put it back together, and it is now nice and cleaned up and working beautifully, all for, I think he charged me like less than $100 for that. It was very reasonable. And so far, I've been fairly impressed with this camera. The functions are fairly intuitive. Very simple viewfinder window. There's nothing in the window, no focusing device whatsoever. This is a viewfinder camera. You have to scale focus it or zone focus it or hyperfocal, or use hyperfocal focusing to focus a lens. But then again, that's standard with this class of camera. The film advance is also it's a standard film advance using a lever on the upper right hand top plate, which is very convenient. And and it has a nice feel to it. It doesn't have like a little. It's not just a silent click. It's got a nice mechanical feel to it when you release the shutter. The shutter speed and aperture are controlled along the edge of the well. This is actually the shutter mechanism here. The Zeiss Contina uses a mechanical leaf shutter. This one is a Prontor SVS. Prontor SVS is the name brand of the type of shutter manufactured by the Gautier. I assume I'm saying that correctly. The Gautier company, which manufactured famously the Prontor and Compor lines of photographic shutters in the mid-20th century. The Prontor line was the more budget-friendly line, and this being a budget-friendly camera, it has a Prontor SVS shutter with speeds ranging from 1 second up to 1/300th of a second. Later versions of this shutter went up to 1/500th of a second, but this is a 1950s era camera, and at that time the maximum shutter speed of the Prontor series was 1/300th. The lens is a 3-element Novar 45 millimeter with a maximum aperture of 3.5. There was an optional faster lens available called the Novicar with a maximum aperture of f2.8, but the same focal length of 45 millimeters. I assume those are a bit more rare, but again, half a stop, not such a big deal. No, I mean, I guess it was a big deal back in the 50s when a fast film back then was ASA 200. ASA 400 was about as fast as it was. I don't even know if they had ASA 400 films back in the 50s. They might. I think Tri-X was still rated at 320 back then. So I guess a half a stop of speed on the lens made a big difference. But for daylight shooting, I generally set it for 300. Well, it depends on what speed film I'm using, obviously. One quirk of this camera, which I'm not crazy about, but it is what it is this lever right here. So in order to change or in order to you see as I'm turning, I'm gripping this rim right here, and as I turn, you see the aperture and the shutter speed are mated together. And in order to free them so that they can be reset, you have to push this lever down, okay? So for example, let's suppose I want to set 125 and f8. Well, the reason that it locks is to give you a range of options at that light level. So I can shoot at 125 f8, 60 f11, 30 and 16, and so forth, simply by turning this. But in order to free that up and to adjust for changing lighting conditions, I need to, I need to press this, and and then turn. Okay, so this is now 125 and 3/5, or 125 and here goes F11. All right, but what I've got to do is press this in, and as I press this, if I press and turn here, it'll move the aperture settings. And so let's see. So this is 300 f11. Gives me a rather narrow range of. Let's see, it's 125. So there. So 125 and 5/6, 16, 8, 30, and 11, and so forth. So this rim right here will change the shutter speeds, and if this is engaged, it will change the well, it won't change, but it'll change the aperture, although it will maintain the speed and aperture consistent with a given light value. And then if you want to change the aperture, you got to press that down and move it. I'm not real crazy about it, but whatever. It's not that much of a hassle. It's not such a big deal. The lens is marked in, this one is marked in meters. So you can see that. So M right there. I don't know if you can see that. And so that's convenient. It's got turns freely. Closest focusing distance. This says it's 9/10 of a meter. I don't do a whole lot of close-up work with this camera, obviously, since given that it's a zone focusing unit. But you can. All you need is one of these. Get yourself a tape measure. If you're shooting, say, still lifes, like a flower or something out in, that doesn't move. You can even do it with a model. I shot a model not with this camera, but with another zone focus camera. And you just get the model to hold the end of the tape measure, and you can focus reasonably accurately. It's not going to be 100% accurate every time. This thing is solid as a brick. It is absolute. It is really well made. I don't think there's any plastic on the exterior of this camera at all. I mean, this covering is some kind of vinyl-ish material, and you see this dial here, this inner dial in the frame counter feels like Bakelite, the old plastic from 100 years ago, close to 100 years ago. If you got like an old classic set of poker chips, they might be made out of Bakelite. This window here, is it glass or is it plastic? Not sure. But there's just very little plastic, if any, on this camera anywhere. This thing is built solid, built well, and it's an absolute pleasure. So I've been very happy with it. I've been shooting outside in daylight, so I've just been using Sunny 16. It does have a light meter. The light meter, it works. But it's well. So here's how the light meter works. I'm gonna go over it real quick. You take this. You see what I'm gripping there with my thumb. So as I'm rotating, I'm changing the ASA setting, which maxes out at 650. Yeah. So let's set it to 320. So I'm setting the ASA to 320. Now I need to expose the selenium light meter, so I'll press this. That pops up that little window right there. Okay. And I'm just going to point this at there's a white wall in front of me. And now I move this until it aligns with the needle. And that gives me, and I now look at that red pointer, and the red pointer is between 10 and 11. It's closer to 11 than 10, so let's just call that 11. All right. Now, on the underside of the mechanism here, you see another red pointer, and I'm going to move that red pointer. Oh, shoot, I've got to change. I've got to press this in. I've got to press this. Again, if you were to change the light value, you got to press this and move this until it's at, come on, doggone lines up to number 11, and it ain't doing it. Hold on. Why won't it do that? Press this in and align this. Align this to. Shoot. Here we go. All right. Press this in and move it to number 11. Actually, it's right. Press that. And, aha, got it, got it, got it. Hold on, just come on. Don't mess with me. There we go. There. Okay. All right. So now, that red pointer is pointing at the number 11. If you can see that. Okay. So now, number 11, so that means that I've got a shutter speed of 1511, 30 and 8, 16.56, 125 and f4. Is that accurate? Let's find out. Here is my Sekonic twin-mate L208, my old trusty. This, I'm going to set the ISO to 320, which is right about here. Point it at the same wall. Going to give me, let's see, make sure that's right. Oh, move a little bit here. There. Okay. And that's giving me 125 and just about, it's pretty close, 125 and f4. This is showing between 125 and f4 to 5.6, a little closer to 4 on the Sekonic. And this was showing me 125 and f4 at the at number 11 there. So that's fairly accurate. I'm going to call that a, given that this light meter was built in the late 1950s and it's still working today, I'm going to say that's a fairly accurate light meter. It's not bad at all. One thing I was very impressed with this camera is the quality of the optics. 3-element lenses are generally not known for their sharpness and contrast, but this one's pretty good. And in fact, I would say that it is significantly better than the 3-element lens in my Retinette. This Retinette has a 3-element Rodenstock Riomar 45mm f2.8, and I've put a bunch of film through this thing, and I'm quite familiar with it. And the Zeiss is a better lens, but the reputation is correct. I think the Zeiss optics are better. This 3-element lens is, in terms of sharpness and contrast, it beats out the 3-element lens in that in the Retinette made by Rodenstock. I think, again, just I'm going to say my subjective opinion. It's not like I had any measurements, any instruments measure the results, but they were pretty clear to my eye. I don't think it's seriously disputable that this lens is sharper and contrastier than the Rodenstock over there in that Retinette. Okay, so those are my first impressions of the Zeiss Ikon Contina, either Contina 2 or Contina IIa, depending. Officially the Contina 2, but known by collectors as the Contina IIa, I think is accurate to say. And I recommend it. I mean, this is just a really well-built camera. It's a little quirky. The user interface it takes some getting used to. There is a learning curve associated with it, but you know, that's going to keep it inexpensive. I mean, in a sense, this is almost the polar opposite of the point and shoots of the 1980s and 1990s. Those things were made out of plastic. They had automatic everything. They were easy to use, but they're not durable. They're you know, when they die, and there are no parts to fix them, and that's it, and they're done. Whereas this thing, you know, it needed work when I got it. I took it into a tech who took it apart, cleaned it up, put it back together, and now it works beautifully, and it will continue to work beautifully for quite some time to come because it is just rock solid. If you want, and they're not expensive. You know, cameras in this class are just not expensive. The Zeiss Continas might be a little bit more expensive than, say, the Retinette, simply because it says Zeiss on it. And anything that says Zeiss is not dirt cheap, but these Continas are just they're not expensive. You can find them in really nice condition for very reasonable prices. And if you're looking to get into film, I'd suggest that this class of camera is a good option because they're built solid, they're built well, they're reliable, they're solid, and it requires knowledge on the part of the user. It's where knowledge will save you money. And so learn your craft, learn the rule of exposure, learn how to operate these cameras, and you can have a really nice, nice reliable film camera for very little bit of money. Anyway, those are my thoughts, my first impressions of the Zeiss Ikon Contina II. Hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you found it informative or useful or entertaining or any of the above. If so, please do like and subscribe and check out the links down below. Take care now. Bye-bye.